So what we're talking about today, really, we're into the holiday season, and you know, I think everybody deserves a break, but at the same time, tá fáin ar dhaoine sais na maidí a leisure. People want to let the hours go with the flow. But at the same time, if you stop entirely, it can be hard to start again. And people have concern, I suppose, that if they get out of a routine, they might never get back into it. So this kind of thing is your bread and butter, like keeping people motivated, keeping them tipping over, doing a bit here and doing a bit there. So I suppose, I don't know what you think, but I suppose you need to find a way to make it easy and light when you're trying to keep things going during the holidays. Something that's kind of, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it is, because, you know, you're working hard. It depends on how you're going daily as well, you know, and if you're the kind of person who puts a lot of effort in, and you will need a break at some point. Everyone does. I do, even from work, any kind of work. But when you're learning a language, you know, it's hard to take a full break, to kind of totally log off for however much time, you know, a month or two, because you do start to lose it, and people are afraid that they lose it. And it does, it goes away, which in one sense it's all right. You can't be at it constantly if your life doesn't allow you to. So it's trying to find that kind of happy medium where you feel you feel relaxed doing it, and you're doing it in kind of a passive way, or maybe a less amount that you're doing normally. So I suppose actually one of the questions that we got in was about an app that you might use in your time off, which was, of course, the well-known Duolingo. And the question was, what do you think of the Duolingo Irish course? Would it be a good learning option for the summer, and then in general also? So I suppose number one, answering for the summer, yes, it definitely is. It's a great app to help build your vocabulary. The main key there is that there's plenty of repetition, lots and lots of easy words and simple phrases to keep you, you know, on your toes. And also you can listen as well, which is important. You know, you get your pronunciation. If I was answering the second part, and in general, I wouldn't call it myself a course. I would call it a learning aid. It doesn't give the grammar examples that you, or the grammar explanations that you need. And I actually went back onto Duolingo recently to check that in case they've updated it since, because I started learning a bit of Italian myself, and I found that the Italian course was quite nice, and they did give conjugation lists and a little bit more explanation. Now, I checked a couple of things on the Irish Duolingo and I didn't find anything. When you do go into the kind of breakdown of the modules, they give you lots of useful phrases, which is great, but they don't explain those phrases and why they are the way they are. So it's very, very good for people who want to maybe take a break from their general studying and keep going every day. Also, it gives that great kind of buzz when you complete your daily goal and you have your streak and you see your friends learning and you can see the other languages that you're learning. I'm a big fan. But if you're using that on its own forever, I wouldn't expect to be fluent, or maybe I wouldn't expect to have a deep understanding of the breakdown or the grammar of Irish. Now, I know people are afraid of grammar, but unfortunately you need grammar to learn a language. You need to have some sort of understanding if you want to try and progress yourself and start building your own sentences.
Yeah, it's a little bit of learning without context with Duolingo. I found myself that I spent a few months learning Portuguese on Duolingo before coming to Portugal. And then when I got here, I found out that I'd been learning Brazilian Portuguese for months, and that nobody particularly understood me or respected me when I opened my mouth. So you have to do your research. You know, even the word for dog is not the same. You know.
No way.
Yeah. So I'd learned an awful lot of like things about the dog having the keys, and you know.
Well, if you ever head to Brazil on your holidays, you know, you're going to the dog pound.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's fair to say that Duolingo, it might be kind of handy for the holidays if you want to learn a few bits and pieces. But overall, it'd be best to, if you're using Duolingo, to work alongside another course or book. And interestingly, there are other courses online which have that sort of interactive sound clip dimension to them, and videos and text that explains really clearly what's going on in a progressive way. And if you're interested, you'll find those. Where would you find it? You find them at, that's it, Bitesize Irish. That's it. Yeah.
Wow, who knew?
So bear that in mind. Maybe not for the holidays.
Maybe for the holidays also,
maybe,
because it is
maybe for
bit
the
by bit.
holidays.
It is bit
Yeah.
by bit.
Maybe you'd like to buy it for somebody as a present for the holidays. Who knows? So there you go. So Bitesize Irish has a variety of courses and resources that you can access on your phone, indeed, or at home. And it's text, sound clips, and video, but very good, well-constructed lessons put together by Neil for a variety of different levels. So thanks for that. I put together a little list of both offline learning resources, or just ways of keeping yourself entertained through Irish, and mobile friendly ones. I think you probably did something similar. Maybe we'll go one each or something like that.
Sure.
My first offline one, it's kind of thinking of people with children. Maybe the kids are in Gael school, maybe they're not, but maybe they'd like to keep that ticking over during the summer as well. And there's a group called Tishmahori na Gaeltachta, so it's the parents of the Gaeltacht, or na Gaeltachta, so it's the Irish-speaking areas in Ireland, na Gaeltachti. And it's a sort of a group that organises resources and activities for families that are raising their children through Irish, and to help families whose children are going to school entirely through Irish, or who are going to, in order to prepare and to adjust. And one of the things that they've done is a book called Tashka Dialects, so Family Treasure. And it's a sort of nature exploration and colouring book, illustrated by Donald O'Brick from Dunreen down below in West Kerry. And I don't know where you'll get the book or where you won't, but what they've done, which is really kind, is they've made the sheets from the book free as downloadable PDFs. And it's a sort of a treasure hunt, depending on what sort of part of the countryside you're going to. You have a list of the animals and the plants and things that you're likely to find, and you can bring the kids, down to the seashore and see what you can find. But it also has really nice illustrations and the names as gaeilge, and these are available for the 3 major dialects. But also it has less common names, so it'll say, did you find this? But do you know another name for this as well? So I'll try and share this. Just to give an example, because I think these are really nice for families with kids. So this one is Cush Farige. So here on the left, you have the sheet. It's sort of an activity sheet. And you have, see, could you find a ganead, a gannet, nonini mora, dog daisies. So Clochanav is sandstone. And here on the right-hand side, you have pictures of the various different things. And I think that Donald kind of gets to the spirit of the animal in his illustrations. And I don't know what the ohm is, but you have Perthon glass, different types of shellfish, Skian vara, so razorfish. Then you have different types of gulls and gannets. And then this one here, you have different types of plants. So you might be out the fields, and you have the foxglove here, loose moor. And then you have various different names as well. And this one here is Ungiria, the hare. And Meal Maya, one I didn't know about, an alternative. So then you can tick them off, and as you go along, the kids can learn the names of, or you might be learning the names yourself as you go along. And then if they feel like it, and they're at home and they're wrecked after a day at the seashore, they can colour in the pictures as well. You have a nice break for yourself. So that's my number one offline resource. What
The
about you,
hauling.
Emma?
The hauling. I'm going to print those myself, actually.
Oh, actually, I'll just share. Sorry to interrupt you there,
yeah.
but there's basically signposts to it. So if you go to tishmahori.ie there, then you go into the section that says Achfani, then Tashka Tailig, and you'll find it in there. Okay, Broner on Earth.
Yeah, I suppose actually now I'll tie my offline one in with that. So I was trying to think of what I do myself at home. And I have a little balcony, and I'm fond of very basic gardening. Now, I mean herbs at this point, but I was thinking if people did have a garden or a balcony, something for the summer, you might want to, you put your little labels on. Why not label things as gaeilge? So you'd be linking in, then, you'd be broadening your vocabulary. And believe it or not, there's lovely vocab on for, plants, especially as gaeilge. So you'd be linking up. The colors are a little bit different, and there's really nice nahana kainta and so that go with them as well. So that's if you have a garden and you're into gardening and you're growing something. But also if you're not into something like that, you could do something similar by the good old labeling around your house. Now I know it might be a sight for sore eyes for some people, but it does help. I have all my products labeled in my little jars. I have my shukra, plural, all the rest of it. And even when friends come over, I find them pointing out the Irish labels. And I even tested one of them recently enough because they'd been over a couple of times. And I said, what's flower in Irish? And they knew it. So it does help. It kind of subconsciously soaks into your brain. And you might not be using the word every day, but you're seeing that word every day. And perhaps then if you are into cooking rather than gardening, I would suggest something along the lines of translating your own recipes, writing recipes as gaeilge, trying your hand at it. It's quite a nice thing because it's always in the imperative, and that's just the base form of the verb, the stem that you'll find in the dictionary. So if you want to say stir the mix, you look up the word stir on folklore.ie, and that is the word itself. You don't have to conjugate anything. So I find it's simple, it's a nice straightforward way. And you get to build your vocabulary with the nouns that you're using, that you're cooking with, and also then with the verbs, mix, roll, cook, boil, things like that. You can really do a lot with it, and it's straightforward enough, and you could even translate some other recipes that you find online.
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me of the way I used to teach a child in Ireland, which was to go to the house, and we used to bake and make soup and this, that, and the other, and just whatever was involved in the process, she learned the words and terms, what she was doing. So that'd be a good thing to do with kids, again, during the holidays, and just to keep them occupied. Yeah, lovely. Kermagut. So what else do I have here? My number two, offline, is just a good book. It's a pretty simple concept. And again, I mean, this is going to depend, obviously, on your level. I do find this is a little bit of a cop-out, because a lot of the time I find when I'm asked to recommend a book for starter level learners of Irish, it's hard to find something that's engaging for adults, and a lot of the time we're recommending children's books. So I'm going to just make things nice and easy for myself and go for an intermediate level book. And this is quite funny and not too heavy. So I think if you're at an intermediate level, if you read this and kept your phone by you and had a look at the dictionary, maybe 3 or 4 times per page, you'll understand what's going on, and you'll learn a few words as you go along as well, add to your store focal. So this is Bitty Jenkinson, and she's quite a funny writer. And this is on Tahar Pádraig Ó Dineen, Blachtere. I have it here. So Tahar Pádraig Ó Dineen was a man, priest, who compiled a famous dictionary, or infamous, some people would say, Folklore Gaeilge agus Bíorla. A dictionary that contains a very rich and sort of obscure collection of words, as well as lots of normal ones. But I digress anyway. But basically, Biddy has reimagined Tahar Podrigodanin as a sort of amateur detective in the sort of like Sherlock Holmes. And the stories are 10 or 15 pages long. Quite funny. There's a fair bit of that sort of Flann O'Brien sort of humour in them. So that'd just be a nice one for the beach. It won't take you all day to read a story. You kind of you keep your little bit of practice going, and you have a bit of a laugh as well. So that's a good one. And then if you want to keep it even briefer or more brief, just Proverbs in Irish by G. Bannister. Very user-friendly, arranged by theme, very well indexed. And this is a nice way just to learn a few proverbs, something to reflect on before you go off and do something else. And it'll only take you 5 minutes. So, and also you can fit it in your pocket as well.
You can.
So there you go.
I actually did the same, Ben. I thought of a book and I was trying to think myself. Now, I'm not a big reader, all right? I get bored. I don't know what's wrong with me. I have so many books and I've read a bit of them and then I've put them away and then I've forgotten about them. So I did a bit of Google all and I looked. Now, I can't recommend from experience, but I thought the same thing, you know, rather than talking about kids' books, I found something that is available on Shopalour. It's quite okay, around the €15 mark, but it's Irish short stories, short stories in Irish for beginners by Ollie Richards. And it says in the description itself, it says 8 stories in a variety of exciting genres, from science fiction to crime to history and thriller. And they say that it follows the A1, it's between A1 and B1 level of the Common European Framework. So you're talking beginners up to lower intermediate. So it could be worthwhile, and because it's short stories, you don't have to sit there and try and finish the entire book. You get 8 little milestones throughout. Maybe, you know, you might go for throughout the whole summer that you read a short story a week. That's 2 months, and you've read 8 short stories by the end of it. The other book that I actually recommend, which I did in school, but it's actually in my primary school, but I went to an Irish speaking primary school. So we had a bit of a higher level, but it's for adults learning Irish, and it's called Dún Varú ar an Dart le Rory O'Boyle. Have you read it, Ben? It's well, as the title says, Dún Varú is murder and the Dart is the public transport system in Dublin. So there's a murder, and I actually read part of the first chapter with my reading group as part of the Grow membership on Bitesize. Once a month I do a gaeilgeoir and we do a bit of reading together out loud. I change it up every month. No one knows what I'll choose. I don't know until the day before. And I chose that maybe 2 months ago, and it went down a treat. So I would highly recommend it. It's a mystery, so you do want to keep going. And the nice thing is that it has little footnotes for the vocabulary here and there, not lots, but, you know, and there's a lot of repetition there. You'll see the same vocabulary coming up. So once you look it up the first time, you'll see it another 5 or 6 times, which is good because you can, by the end of the book, perhaps read it a little bit more fluidly and quickly and feel like you've progressed. So they're mine.
Lovely stuff. So what do I have next? Oh yeah, this is inspired by one of our Grow members as well, who, when she goes somewhere, she keeps a very detailed diary. Now, the thing about keeping a diary of your travels is it could be as detailed or as advanced as you want yourself, you know, so you can keep it quite simple, 1 or 2 sentences a day, or you can write a big essay like our friend does. So this is something you can do. Again, it's going to push you to seek out new terms, new words, new expressions. So it'll push you a little bit every day. But at the same time, if you're finding it too difficult, you could just take a few notes as gaeilge, and if you feel like it, you could return to it again when you get home and finish it off. But it's just a way of letting what you're doing inspire how you engage with your learning. Yeah. Okay, so these are offline things. When people go away, they don't, a lot of the time, have a lot of stuff with them, but they always seem to have their phone. no matter where they go. So we're going to look at some mobile-friendly resources as well. So do you have anything in that line?
Well, I'm a bit addicted to social media, so of course I'm going to suggest the social media aspect of it. Well, it depends. If you are a social media user, I'm not telling you to go and set up a social media account now just because of me. But if you are on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, perhaps, you may be interested in, well, if you're on Facebook, joining some groups, of course. There's lots, if you even just type in gaeilge in the search bar, or Irish learners, there's lots of groups where you can discuss with others. Don't be getting into arguments, because these places are definitely mad for a bit of fighting sometimes. But you can get resources from others. You can perhaps, have a little conversation online with them. If you're more into scrolling like I am on Instagram, for example, you could just search gaeilge. I did it myself, and I had a look what came up. There's lots of creators on there that are making posts, weekly, some daily, but a couple a week perhaps, that when you're scrolling through and you see your pictures of your friends and your family, and that cousin went on holidays, and then a post comes up with some phrases in Irish. And if you follow some creators, I'll share a couple in a second, but if you follow them, you're passively learning. You'll glance and you think, oh, that's a nice phrase, I'll note that down. So it's not intensive that you have to sit down and learn a list of vocabulary, but it can help. Or you might be interested, you just might get a notion one day to go onto their page and go scroll through some of their posts. The other thing is with TikTok and now Instagram with Reels, and Reels now are also linked with Facebook because, Meta and all of the rest of it. Lots of creators, same creators and more as well on TikTok and on Instagram doing Reels, which give you phrases or little, they do little vlogs. As gaeilge, I used to do them myself. I'm not going to promote it myself because I no longer do it, but I have some videos on there as well, where, I kind of mix gaeilge and béarla. So I mix Irish and English together so that people can pick up a couple of words. And if it's something that you'd yourself be into, why not, instead of doing a written diary, you might do a vlog, a video diary of your day, and pop in some vocabulary that you have, or narrate your day if you're not fully confident in doing it fully in Irish like I did. For learners, I wanted to have kind of a mix, so you could say, oh, today I went to the shoppa and Yannick May, and blah 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 blah. And you're not doing it for anyone. Who knows, you might get a following, but yeah, creating your own page where you can motivate yourself, and it's something that you might do for fun. The other thing linked with that is, if you're not interested in creating videos or anything like that, what about using what you already have? If you're a poster on Instagram, if you put up a story or a post, why not caption it as gaeilge? And then you might have to think, how do I say that in Irish? And then you have a little phrase or a little sentence that you might do it bilingually. I do it myself. I put them up bilingually because I know not everyone can understand it. But it's kind of this informal way of, you just take an extra 10 minutes to search the dictionary for some words, build your sentence, and that's your gaeilge gach lá ticked off. That's your couple of minutes of Irish every day.
Very nice. Emma. I spend as little time as possible on social media myself. I wish I did. So you won't find that in my list. What do we have now? I have, going back to one of my old favorites, really, is on Nuacht Vowel. It seems to me that if you're going on holidays, you might just like to take a break from news and current affairs, but at the same time, you might like to just have a little bit of knowledge of what's going on. So you could just listen to the news once a week on Nuacht Vowel, and you could listen to it nice and slowly as gaeilge. So on Nuacht Vowel is a really good resource, and you'll find it wherever you find podcasts, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Now, I'm not sure about the other ones, but I know on Spotify, when you listen to it, there's also the text of what you're listening to, which you can refer to as you go. And Nuchtvel is nice because there's a huge archive of recordings, and you'll find them in all of the, well, you find them in the three major dialects, but you also find them read by people from places that are not, you know, traditional Irish speaking areas as well, which is nice to hear. And it's just generally something like the main stories of the week, read nice and slow. You can listen to it as many times as you want. You can take a break, read it yourself, listen to it again, and, you know, work on terms that you find hard to pronounce, and, you know, learn something new as well as you go. So that's something that you can do sitting on a bus on your way to the airport or whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, Nuchtvel.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of my next one. Online. Let me have a look. Yeah, actually, I'm inspired by another one of our Grow members. Now, you could argue if this is online or offline, but if you're an online dictionary user, you might need your computer or your phone. But one of our Grow members is has translated something. You know, he took a poem that he liked and tried his hand at a bit of translation. Now, translation can be difficult from any language into any other language. You know, it's difficult to translate, you know, sayings, and certain things won't come across the same. So don't expect that your translation will be the official English translation or the official Irish translation of whatever you are working on. But I think it's good practice. Again, like I said, captioning in Instagram, you have to go and search for some words that you might not normally use. And it's all about that kind of, it's easy to Google Translate something and stick it into Google Translate and have it side by side, the whole thing. But that, you won't learn it that way. If you have to go and physically type in the word, find the word, and write down the word, there's a process there that, you know, it links it into your brain as well. And for me, it helps a lot for me to write things down. So that's how I enjoy learning. I like learning. And so if there's a song that you like, maybe try and do the verse, try and do the chorus, verse one, or the chorus, the verse and the chorus. And then, you know, you could even try to find words that rhyme or that sound the same or that fit the tune that you want it to be in. You know, it's a little, it's not an easy thing to do, but no one's breathing down your neck. You don't have to do it. But if it's something that you are interested in, you might find yourself discovering new words or new phrases or new ways to express things in Irish that you might have. Well, like if you were doing something from German into Irish, you might find lots of similarities there, lots of words that sound similar. So it's even if your native language is in English, it's even more fun maybe to even pick another language, or you could pick another language that you're learning and double up on them. If you're heading to Spain, you know, you could do double up it that way. But I think it is a nice way to I don't know, to broaden how you learn the language. You don't have to sit down in front of a book. Do something that you're interested in.
Absolutely. And if you're doing that on 3 Grammar D, the grammar wizard on tanglen.ie is very useful for that sort of work as well. Yeah, and so I just have, you were going to share some of your favorite social media contributor type people. These are them there, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. So gaeilgeoir, gaeilgeoir, and Irish with Molly, I picked those up. I follow some of them myself. They do nice little posts daily or some weekly little phrases. I saw that gaeilgeoir has one arguing in Irish and gives 6 phrases that you might want to use if you're having a scrap with someone. And with Mulchscale. Yeah, and then with Mulchscale, they also have a website that you can use, which I'm a huge fan of. And the nice thing about Mulchscale is that they create little videos, 6-7 minutes long. And the main pull for me is not only what they cover is always very interesting. They also cover lots of things going on in my hometown of Dungarvan and on Rhine. But their subtitles are in Irish. So you're not drawn down to the English subtitles. The subtitles are as gaeilge, so you can really link the word and the sound to each other. So if you don't want to sit down on the website of Mullscale and scroll through them, follow them on their social media and the posts will come up as they're done. And Mionella then, as far as I know, is doing the same kind of thing in the north of Ireland. Yeah. So I follow both of those, and you know, it's kind of a little bit of news as well, local news in certain areas that you get to zone in on certain people or certain businesses or certain events that are going on around the country, and it keeps you in the loop as well as to what's going on around Ireland.
Oh yes, very nice. Yeah, Mullscale is very good indeed. So, and one that I sometimes dip in and out of, though it's a bit more hardcore, is gaeilgeoir on Facebook, which is, I mean, there's a lot of discussion of different things, but essentially the only language that's used is gaeilge. So number one, respect the rule, but you'll find all sorts of very nerdy sort of discussions on there about like whether or not there's a difference between lefoil and airfoil, for instance, which, you know, you can drive yourself mad with, and it'll continue for a week, and then most people will conclude that there isn't, in this case anyway. But some people will be vehement that there is a very important difference, and yeah, that can be quite interesting. And again, yeah, there's a connection there with Mullscale as well. You see, you know, little links, little things happening that eventually result in something on a screen somewhere. So yeah, that's nice. So Cadella ho gumsa, ever though gumsa mobile friendly. Again, this is something that I listen to sometimes at the weekends. On Saturday morning, if I get the opportunity. And again, this one is relatively advanced, but I like it because it's Irish in a sort of real world and fairly international sort of context. And it has good links with the diaspora, but the stories are not always what you would expect. And this is Ashti on Air, which is on Radio na Gaeltacht. So you'll find this, well, it's on live during the week, but you'll find it repeated on Saturdays, or it was the last time I checked, but you'll also find it on the RTE radio app. And it's just a series that's a bit, if anybody listens to RTE in English, it's a bit like Sunday Miscellany, but maybe a little less cozy than Sunday Miscellany. And so it's newly written essays by a variety of writers, professional and amateur, and some pretty decent music in between them as well. So that's nice. If you're on your holidays, stick that on the headphones and see what you get out of it. But again, it's gaeilge ag an gná Lewis, so it's fairly advanced, I suppose. But if you're up to it, it's a nice way just to keep in touch with things while on your holidays. William Rodella Gutson son, Emma.
Dóilm é kind of shaky enough. No, Níl aon rud sa bhreis go.
Okay. Well, Iverchi Gumsa is pretty obvious again. Just to remind people that Bitesize Irish, we do have a variety of different courses for people at different levels. And again, this is all mobile friendly stuff as well. So this is my recommendation, number 3, not to hide our light under a bushel. So Anava, so what we do have is we have an automatic system for sending through messages that people submit for Q&As, and there was a bit of a hiccup with it over the last couple of months, and some messages didn't get through. So if you sent a message and we didn't get around to answering it and you're wondering why, well, that may be the reason. So what we did was we picked out a few of these to have a look at during this session. And again, as I should have said at the beginning, you can send your questions in, Bio, and we keep an eye on the chat bar there. You're welcome to send in your questions, particularly on the theme, which we have tonight, which is Fowlin Riataurig, learning during the summer, during the holidays. And if you're watching this back, at some stage in the future. And if anything comes to mind, if you have any questions based on anything that you hear in the discussion this evening, we do keep an eye on it. I check up on the comments once a week. So if you put your comment in there, we'll get to it sooner or later. Okay, lovely stuff. So I'll have a look at what we have here in terms of things that came in over the last couple of months. So yeah, Kesh Tichan, so Emma, show Ruby, stare Ruby. I need help understanding the overall structure of the language better, or at least the most important things to know about the language. So actually, I'll go for this one. So we have a cheat sheet actually on this. We have a blog, which is bitesize.irish/blogs. And we publish blogs related to various different things, but we also publish cheat sheets that kind of sum up an element of grammar or a dimension of the Irish language. And we have a quite general one, which is called Things You Need to Know for Irish Language Beginners. And essentially what our content developer Neil has done is put together a simple guide to basic things that people probably wish they knew in the past before they started to study Irish. So it's a good place to start. I don't know if I can share that on the screen. I do have a copy of it, but I'm not sure if this will share. Let's see. No, I don't think I can share that, but that's a downloadable PDF, Ruby, which you can get just there, www.bitesize.irish/blog. If you go to the blog, I think it's on the second page of the blog. So that's a good place to start. Okay, so Count Itchimartian, Emma Labronerum, there. Casey, what are some helpful ways to remember what words to emphasize in speaking? I tend to get lost with my American cadence.
Well, good question. And well, number one, I'd say would be to listen to some of the things that Ben might have suggested, Nuacht Vowel and Ashti on air, and get your ear into the language, even if you don't understand what's being said, just to hear the flow of how it goes. But this is actually something that we touch on and is talked about in one of our modules on Bitesize called Dealing with Dialects, which is part of the if you're an Explore member or a Grow member, you'll have access to the Ashta reference pack. And this is a reference pack that's there for certain topics that you might want to dip in and out of. And dialects are always a thing. So it actually doesn't have to do with your dialect. But the basic rule that is of Irish is that the first syllable of most of the words is the strongest, or it should be the strongest. But if you're speaking Munster Irish, the stress might be on a later syllable if it has a fada, a sheen, a fada, so an accent on the letter. So for example, we have you can actually listen to these examples, and there's lots of them on our site on Bitesize. For example, Colleen. And I think Ben would say Colleen as well. But if we had Neil on, he would say Colleen. So you'd have it on the start of the word instead of at the later end. But again, you need to listen to that rather than learn a rule, because of course not every single word has the stress at the start or at the end. So my advice there would be to either listen to our stuff on Bitesize, but also using sites like we mentioned before, chanlan.ie, the dictionary site. If you search words there, you'll be able to listen to them in each dialect, which will also give you an insight on as to into the differences between the three dialects and how the stress patterns are. Some will be very much the same, some will be very different, some will have a slight difference, but that's the beauty of the language. So my advice is to listen, rather than learning a rule and trying to stick to it. You really need to tune your ears into something, because it's new to you, so you need to get used to it. So that, and mimic them. Mimic them out loud as well. Say them out loud. You might feel silly at the start. Repeat them, because what is going on in your head might be different when it comes out of your mouth. So you have to link the two.
Yeah. So again, a Nuachtfeil is a very good resource in that regard. And even just, you were talking about Mulchfield, where you have some sort of reference, where you have the subtitles and you have the sound, really helps. So it just helps you to just gradually get accustomed to how different groups of consonants sound. You can pick up patterns without having to sit down and technically go through it. When you're starting off, that can be a better way to learn. And then Casey just had one more additional little question here. So this question is, when can a gaeilgeoir adopt their Irish name if their name is already anglicized?
Right
you
now.
Poor thing, like, it's absolutely up to yourself. There's no black belt required. Just go for it. The main convention in gaeilgeoir in Irish is not to refer to somebody in the Gaelic form of their name if they have an anglicized version, unless they've given you permission, or unless they've indicated that they would like that. But you're free to call yourself by whatever name you wish. Do you concur with that, Emma?
I do. I'm given names in Germany left, right, and centre. As gaeilge, I'm trying to baptize them with some sort of Irish name, figuring out their German name and then going from there. So do it now. No time like the present.
Absolutely. Okay, and then Lay Glath is another resource that's good for what we were talking about in terms of, here we go. That's it there, Lay Glath. So sound and vision there. Okay, so question, so Rob, how many dialects of Irish are there in Ireland? So Rob, there are three main dialects. So we have Munster, Connacht and Ulster, and then there are regional variations within those dialects. So Emma and I both speak the Munster dialect, but her pronunciation is not the same as mine. But most of the words that she uses and the preference that she would have for certain things like leis and home off are also in two, rather than freshen or fusta, like you would have in other parts of the country, would be the same as mine. So we just don't consider maybe that difference in the pronunciation to constitute a different dialect. So we have these regional variations. In Connemara, you have lots of variation in pronunciation, but none of these variations are really strong enough to constitute a dialect in themselves. So three. Then, as myself and Neil were saying recently, there's something else going on in Belfast, which has quite a vibrant Irish language community, and they would model themselves on Tirchonel and Donegal, and lots of people go to Donegal in the summer when they're kids and teenagers to learn Irish. But I feel that there's something of a dialect emerging there of its own, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there in the future. I don't think it's quite there yet, but yeah, there's something going on there. But at the moment, three main dialects. Anias, so Gurmagad Rob asked the Kesh. Thanks for your question there, Rob. So Bill there, I don't know what you think about this. Bill says, does the standard taught in schools lean towards one of the dialects? You may be better able to answer this than me, Emma, because I didn't learn the standard in school. When we got the books, we were basically told to rub out certain words. My impression is that the standard leans more towards the Irish of the most populous Gaeltacht, in fairness, where most people live, which is Connemara and Connacht. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I find it myself. I use a certain amount of books when I'm teaching nowadays, and yeah, I find myself questioning. Well, not questioning. I'm not used to using some of the words, so I definitely give the alternative used in Munster Irish. I would say the standard is Connacht with a little bit of Munster mixed in as well. But yeah, but again, a lot of words between Connacht and Ulster are similar, and Munster is different. So you could argue there as well. But I would say you are correct in what you said, Ben.
Yeah, I think that there's something else going on with the Gael Scoileanna, though. So, Bill, for instance, if you're talking about an ordinary English language school where the children are learning Irish as a school subject, I think the influence of an Caidán or the standard is stronger. We have a lot of Gael Scoileanna, which are all Irish schools at primary level, and I think that the dialect that the teacher speaks has a stronger influence in that context, because they tend to be there are more native speakers, and they tend to obviously have a higher standard of Irish, even if they aren't, and that good Irish has generally been learned in one Gaeltacht or another. So I think in the Gael Scoileanna, children are taught. Of course, you may have a teacher from one Gaeltacht one year and another one the next year, but I don't think it's skewed so strongly towards the standard, or the influence of the standard isn't as strong, I'd say. Yeah, so Brian there is saying that Connemara and Achill are fairly distinct from the rest of Connacht. Again, I would argue that that's more about pronunciation than actual differences in terms or grammar, Brian, in the same way that there's a difference in the way that Emma and I speak. But I do think, yeah, as you move north from Unspedale, as you get to North Connemara through Mayo, there's that sort of more gradual sort of movement from Connemara to Donegal, where some places it's like a little bit of a mix, the two, certainly in terms of pronunciation anyway. Yeah, other Caderfo, Emma.
Yeah, I agree. And even because I thought the second part coming in from Brian there as well, Munster used to be the most popular. So of course you talk about an Tahar Padar O'Leary, talking about Caint and Lena, the speech of the people, and he was very much a Munster Irish speaker from Ballyvourna. And yeah, that was the original standard almost, but it's since changed. But yeah, it's like how I say Timple and you say Teample. Spelt the same word, just a little bit of a difference. So I wouldn't class us as two different dialects, just sub dialects.
That's it. Cormagat Vrian. So Keshtel, so Mary, who's just very much starting out. So Mary is asking, is Mná the plural form of ban? So ban is woman, and yes, Mná is the plural form of ban. So Mná is women. And what is the genitive plural of ban? Somewhere I read that hat and aman means the women's hats, and this confused me. But yeah, you're spot on there, Mary. So Mná is the nominative plural of ban, and then the genitive plural of ban is ban. And then you have hat and aman is the hat of the women. And then just that M there, that uru, that's just a feature of using the definite article no in the genitive case. So the base word is still bon, but we have hata naman. So you're spot on there. Yeah, but it is confusing, the genitive, when you encounter it for the first time. Gur mahagut Mary, Martin the Hog, Kesh son, O Linda, relating to the rain. And Linda says, with so many ways to say it is raining, which would generally be the best to use in each of the 3 dialects? And we actually have a little video on how to say it is raining somewhere on YouTube if you look for it. And I think that Siobhan, before she made the video, concluded that the best way to say it, to be understood in all 3 dialects, would be Tá sé cur báistí. I think he's spot on. So Tá sé cur báistí. I think you'll be understood wherever you go if you say that. Lovely. So we'll aim cheistelle gum dit and so Emma. Heather and Will.
Cianan son o Melvin. Yeah, so Melvin asks about the word order in Irish. And interestingly enough, it reminded me immediately of German. So the question was, what is the word order in an Irish sentence? Is it time, place, manner, or manner, place, time? German is time, manner, place, but in Irish, well, the first thing we need to know is that it's a VSO language. It's verb, subject, object, which is a distinct feature of Celtic languages. But the more in-depth description of that then would be in each one would be verb, subject. You'd have your direct object, your indirect object. Then you'd have your location, so your place. You'd have your manner, and then you'd have your time. Now, I didn't create a sentence with every single one of those elements.
But if anybody can, they get a prize.
Be my guest. I spotted one actually sometime before. Chianig, yeah. So Chianig me ula. So I bought. So bought I essentially. If you're going with the verb first, may I the subject, object. What did I buy? I bought an apple or apples. So ula. In the place, sashupa, and then in a, which is yesterday. So you've your location, sashupa, the manner. Maybe quickly, go topic in a. So Chianig me ula sa shupa go topic in a. So but usually, you know, people will often start a sentence with in a Chianig me ula. You can very much do that, but if you're going by, you know, what's it of, you know, the official, but you know,
yeah, well, it all depends on what you're trying to say as well. If you're trying to say that you bought the apples in the shop yesterday rather than chicks a shop in a. It's chicks a shop a Chinese hula in a. It all depends. Like
it depends. Yeah. But if you're going with the basis and you don't want to put emphasis on anything in particular, for example, if you don't say it was in the shop that I bought the apples or anything, you know, you can go with that one. Generally speaking, you're very safe to pop the time at the end. It always, you know, I'll see you tomorrow. But again, you can also say fekig me amorochu. So it's we're not so strict. We're not as strict as German, I'd say, for example.
Okay, and again, Melvin Gurmahagot, this is information that's available in a simpler form, actually, in that cheat sheet that I referred to earlier. So again, that's just going across the bottom of the screen. That's one of the things. The sort of fundamentals that are covered in the cheat sheet, and it's nice to just kind of get to grips with these ideas. There are things about initial mutations there as well. So it's a good place to start. Yes. So I'm just going to have a look at one of the questions that came in recently, not necessarily connected to tonight's theme, which is learning during the holidays. So yeah, this is a question from Debbie, and again, it'd be interesting to see what you think about this. This is subtle enough. Now, Debbie is saying, agus Cormac, Debbie, I have questions with the construction of need and want. For example, tá bia wuha, she, well, I won't translate it. Agus tastíonn sú aráis to woot. So tá bia wuha, she wants food, I would say. Tastíonn sú aráis to woot, you want orange juice. What Debbie's asking is, does the tastíonn change the meaning, or are these phrases interchangeable? So I would say, first of all, with this, the prepositional pronouns, this come from o, this wim, wit, wig, wuhe. This one would relate to wants rather than needs. So let's say wit and the other forms there definitely relate to want, but tastíonn can be used for both want and need, depending on the context, and it might not always be possible to know which is meant. So I would say, for like, I want food, tá bia wim. I might say tá bia ag tastal wim as well, and for me I would still be saying I want food. And perhaps the presence of this prepositional pronoun has something to do with it. So I would say, you know, tá bia ag tastal sa Sudan would more be that food is needed in Sudan. Tá sé ag tastal. And again, this thing with ag tastal, you know, how kick ag tastal on Varson. That man needs a kick, you know. You might say it if somebody's being an oaf, or, you know, kind of needs to cop onto themselves. How kick it has though, you know, but it doesn't mean that he actually wants a kick. But you might say tá punt or piunta tastal on Varson. That man wants a pint. It's not. It might be that the man needs a pint after a very hard day, do you know? Mm-hmm. But I think it's more context dependent. Mm-hmm. So there are less ambiguous ways of saying, you know, that you need something rather than tastíonn. And so tá gá gom le, I have a requirement for, or I need, or tá rud éigean de dhí, tá bia de dhí sa Sudan, like food is needed in Sudan. There's no ambiguity there. I say de dhí, it's required or it's needed. So to sum up, these forms of o, wim, wit, wig, wuha, that would be wants. And then using tastíonn could be either, depends on the context. You might need to be there. It might not work if you're writing something, but if somebody says it in company, it might be clear what they mean. And then if you want to be less ambiguous and go for required or needed, you can use gá or de. So there we go. Tá gá gom le bia. I need food. Sorry, I want food. That should be. And then tá bia de dhíorm. I need food. There we go. Tá gá gom. That. Sorry, I need to edit that again.
Oh, yeah.
I'm confusing myself here. Okay. So these are two different ways to say that you need food. Okay. Tá gá gom le bia, I need food. Tá bia de dhíorm, I need food or require food. Okay. Whew. Tá go maith. So again, as I say, you're welcome to send us your questions, particularly on the theme of learning during the holidays.
I spot a question there that came in earlier from Bill again. Will this session be available online with links to these suggested materials? And they will indeed. Everything will be linked in the blog post below the video in the description. And of course, once we end this live, it'll be available forever on YouTube. So you can head back to whatever you were particularly interested in and listen again, watch again, and send to your friends and family and suggest what they need to do over the summer.
Lovely. So, yeah. So then another question from Raoul here, Gurmahagat Raoul. This one relates to when do you put a T on an S at the start of the word to have TS? So what are the different contexts or cases? So number one, Raoul, is feminine nouns that start with an S in the nominative singular following the definite article. So for street, for instance, we would have shroud. So that means street or a street. But if we put the definite article before it, we have unthroid, the street. The second case where this occurs will be with those singular feminine nouns in the nominative. So a bit of a list here, Raoul, but where those feminine nouns in the nominative singular are following these pairings of a preposition and the definite article, you'll have it. So egon, éron, ason, chuigon, fuion. So the on is contained in that one word, fui, on. Leishon, own, again that's o plus on, own. Rivon, haran, agus tridon. You will have the T on the S, and also after den, dun, and so throid, for instance, if we're sticking with the example of shroud. And also in the Ulster dialect, after these pairings of prepositions and the article and those three, den, dun, and so, they also put a T on an S in the case of masculine singular nouns in the nominative, so both feminine and masculine in that context. And then the third instance is going to be the genitive plural, so masculine nouns starting with an S following the definite article in the genitive case will take that S as well. So if we have shomra, which is room or a room, we have unshomra, so no T before the S there because it's masculine. But then when we go to talk about the door of the room, we have thuras unchomra. So there's your three instances there. Raoul, Gurmina Magat. Magat Karen. Ein cheistelle fog on sun. Anything else left there? What came in recently? Ní dólam gohfuil. I think that's it.
Well.
Oh, I thought I wrote the rule. On about share lower. Lovely stuff. Okay. Tag má marsin, well on town mistake page skill. I think our hour is up in any case. So gur míle magat as a velum, Emma, agus gur magat ver fad. Shifse chur keshna chuin agus vi lower. Thank you all very much, people who submitted questions beforehand and people who are with us live. Lovely to have you. Just see if I can turn off my banners here. Yeah, so agus gur magat to Emma, agus bets arash live reached to Mises, so I'll be with you again in a month's time with a different guest, I imagine, and a different theme. And remember that you can find details on all the plans and the different resources and all the rest of it that we've referred to during the session at bitesize.irish/links. We have a variety of different memberships that you can find at /memberships. And if you're a total beginner and you just want some little tips on how to incorporate Irish into your everyday routine just to practice a little bit every day. There's also a downloadable free ebook, 10 Secrets for Practicing Irish Every Day. Anna. Arshin, Gurma Hagwif.
Gurmila.
Slán
Slán
go fóla chóirde, Íomhá.